Hi, this is Rick for EDU Mobile. Now we're going to look at actually recognizing touch events on the screen. So we've got a couple of things going on here. We've got a very simple interface. We have a label here that says Tap Me, and then the rest of it is just the view that label is sitting on. Now, if we want to interact with a passive control in this way, we must set user interaction enabled on the control. For most active controls, this is already clicked, but for labels and passive controls, this will not be clicked. So we need to make sure that this checkbox has user interaction enabled. Otherwise, even if an event occurs on the label, a touch event, it will not be passed up the chain. So with that, let's go ahead and look at our view controller. We've got a property for label tap, LB tap. This is an outlet UI label property, just as you might expect. And then that's all for the interface file. Now for the implementation file, we have gone ahead and we know that view controller is, or UI view controller is a responder. So this view controller is a responder and able, therefore, to handle touch events. So we have overridden touches began, touches moved, and touches ended. I'm going to close this so that we can see more of it at a time. I am not handling touches canceled. We would handle that in an iPhone, certainly, because chances are that touches would be canceled by an incoming phone call. So anyway, we'll handle that perhaps a little bit later in the course. But for now, we want to trap the action when the touches actually begin, when they move, and when they end. The last thing I'm doing here that I want to cover first is in ViewDidLoad, I am setting the background color to a cyan color. It is very difficult to get one of these primary color types in Interface Builder, because in Interface Builder, if we go over here and try to set this to a cyan, we don't get the interface in our colors interface for that. So I want to just go ahead and override the color in ViewDidLoad. So when the view comes up, its background color gets set to a cyan color. Now, touches began actually does some interesting stuff here. First of all, I want to make sure that touches count is 1. If we want to capture a multiple touch event, we would check for touches count equal 2 and so forth. But touches count is, remember, this touches thing is an NS set of UI touches. So if touches count is 1, we want to go ahead and proceed. Otherwise, we don't want to do anything. We may want to trap a double touch or a triple touch or any number of touches. But in this case, we only want to catch it if the count of touches is 1. The touches occur regardless, but we are only interested in a single touch. Now, the event object contains touches for view as a method. So we want to see if this touch happened in the label or not. So if event touches for view in self label tap count is equal to 1, in other words, we have one touch and it happened in the label, then we set self view's background color. We check to see if it is a cyan color, and that's why we set it in ViewDidLoad. If it is a cyan color, change it to yellow. Otherwise, change it to a cyan color. Now, if it didn't occur in the label, and that's the else clause to our if statement here, then we get that touch as touches any object. If we have one touch, if touches count is 1, then the any object method of that NS set touches will give us back the one touch that it is. And then we want to print out began and then the position. So these are floating points. Coordinates are always floating points in iPhone or iPad, iOS. They're always floats. So we just truncate that to what happens before the decimal point. And then we use the touch location and view self.view and get its X and its Y coordinate. And that's very simple. Now, while the touches are down, the user may move their finger. So if touch is moved, then we want to count again to see if the touches is only 1, and then we're going to print out moving and then the coordinate. And then if touch is ended, we're just going to check and see again if the touches count is 1. Now, why in the world are we checking every single time to see if the count is 1 and then getting the touch? Well, let's imagine that the user puts one finger down and holds it there. Now they put another finger down. These are two separate events with two, actually they are two separate events, but the UI event object is reused. So the count of touches would change between the two. So if the user puts down one finger and then puts down the rest of their hand, there would be two events. The touches would begin on the other four fingers. They may move on the initial finger, and then they would end for all 5 fingers, potentially individually. So we're checking for the count of the touches every single time. Now, then, with the ended, we're going to print out the coordinates in using the same kind of way. So now let's go ahead and test this. See what happens. I'm going to avoid the label right now, just so that we can see our output for the coordinate system. So back to the simulator. If we see this and we're moving, and now if we end, we'll get 1 began at wherever it was, and then we're getting a moving every time it detects that a touch moved. And there's a lot of them, we can see. So we can very easily track our touches, and we could track multiple touches in this same way. And then ended is where I release the mouse. So again, began, moving, ended. And we see that. Okay. Now, if we tap the label, we see that we get an ended event, but we didn't move, and the began event is trapped to say, oh, well, did this touch occur inside the label or not? And that is event, location in view, and then we pass it the label's name. So again, and again, and again. And there you go. So this is a very simplistic demonstration, but we're going to build on this in future examples, in future units, to see how we can incorporate touch events with other events that are happening in our program. Thank you very much.